Okay, this is the STOWA is for Foundation of Applied Water Research. In the Netherlands, we have, let's say, 22 water boards at the moment. When I started 30 years ago at the STOWA, we still had about 36 water boards. And 20 years earlier, we had 2,000 water boards in the Netherlands. So there's a kind of agglomeration of it. You see, they're divided all over the Netherlands, and some are more or less have the boundary of let's say, the provinces they are lying into. But there is a water board, like say, like Rivierenland, where I think boundaries in 3 different provinces and 5 different safety regions. So it's not all one-on-one. Let's say province water board Friesland is one-on-one with the province of Friesland. So it depends a little bit how the geographical and the political institutions are organized. We have, let's say, we're an umbrella organization of the water boards, more or less. And there are more or less three umbrella organizations. One is the ICT umbrella organization, het Waterschapshuis. One is the Union of Water Boards, that's more the political, it's about lobbying. And the third is STOWA, which is about innovation, research and institute. And I think Dutch water management is completely about cooperation, you know? If you have a cyclist and when you're doing a Tour de France, the person on head has all the wind and all things. And especially from number 2, 3, 4, and 5, they have they use 30% less energy to achieve the same velocity as number 1. I think that's one of the big advantages of working together. The other thing is, like they do over here, if you want to make a human tower, you need a good foundation, and but there's only one person who stands on top of the tower. But the one person on top of the tower with this new innovation or research topic can only do it because his bases are very good. So, and you need support of everybody. So that's more or less the concept of the Dutch water boards. And also the original word poldering, which is an English word, derived from the Netherlands. And in the old days about poldering, everybody was responsible for his own part of the levee. So that could be, if you were a farmer, you only had 20 meters or 50 meters of levee. And if you maintained your levee very well, but your neighbor didn't do anything about it, your land was inundated. So the whole concept of the water board is that you work united, that united you would struggle against the flooding. Now, here you see also, because Netherlands was not only about protecting against the sea, but also reclaiming from the sea. So we did a lot of poldering and achieving extra land from the 1300s on. And sometimes, as you see on the left, you had a little bit disasters, the famous floods like the Elizabeth flood or other kind of floodings. But at the end, we more or less achieved quite a huge Netherlands. Although now to climate change, there's a lot of discussion if we can maintain the boundaries we have. But that's a different story. Here you see how it is. If you see at the Netherlands on this picture, I think this is quite rough. We have two kinds of areas which are prone to flooding. One is by sea and the other is by rivers. And combined, it means that about 70% of the Netherlands has some kind of area which is prone to floodings. And the dark blues are the areas which are lying quite beneath the sea level, and the light blues are which are above sea level, but because of the inundation of rivers could be flooded. So and also the nicest thing about the Netherlands is that about 70% of the people and 80% of our gross national income is from this part of the Netherlands. So the nice color flood-prone proof areas don't have much people, and especially don't have much economical activities. That's a kind of thing that we're already in a kind of trap that we can't do anything what we should do logically. Going back to the STOWA. What is the STOWA? It's a kind of knowledge broker organization. It's a kind of management construction. We only have 10 employees, some quite large flex workers group. We have a regular budget about 9.5 million, and we have 10 million additional budget on projects somehow. And we have several areas which are both urban water management, flood prevention, wastewater treatment, and water system management. So it's quite broad. So it also means sewage installations are on our agenda. And we have a mission, like any decent organization, you have always missions, and that is to define, collect, develop, distribute, and implement applied knowledge. So we're not working on theoretical or scientific knowledge. That's something what should be done at the knowledge institutes and the universities. But where the step behind is that's to implement the knowledge that the practitioners can use it. And the other thing is what every governance organization always have, that you have to work better, cheaper, more efficient, let's say. That's so the whole state of the art. And there's one thing that we had a flooding in Vilnius in 2003. And then the judge decided that the water board or the levee owner and the levee maintainer should always use state-of-the-art knowledge and technology to protect the hinterland. And if he's not doing, he's liable for, let's say, then he's more or less neglecting his work, and then he's financially responsible for the consequences of not applying the latest status of knowledge. So that's also one of the thresholds where our organization, but also the water boards have to do. So you can't say, let's say if there's some nice thing developed in the UK, we should apply it, or at least we should have thought about it, why we should not apply it. But otherwise the judge will always hold the organization responsible for not applying that knowledge. And we have also a credo. Credo is from, for, and with, and we should be in the middle of from, for, and with. So it's something always in for the people who pay our organization. There should also be a reward for the knowledge. We're not doing knowledge because of knowledge, we just should. So that's why we're focusing really on implementing the knowledge with in a kind of network organization together with people from a water board. And we work demand driven. And that means that you have knowledge inquiries, you have knowledge providers, and we are somewhere in the middle, and it's like a sandloper. I don't know the English word of it, but you flip it around. And sometimes it's not only that the knowledge inquiries are in the lead, but it's also the knowledge providers are in the lead. So we try to do that kind of mechanism two ways. How do we work? We have, let's say, program commission. That's the organizations who will apply the research what we're doing, or approve the research what we're doing. And they're on 4 different sectors. One is sewage water treatment. One is the urban water cycle. The third is water system, both water quality and water quantity. And water quality is the framework directive, which is quite a hot topic in the Netherlands, about the water quality, which we should have reported to Brussels in 2027. And the fourth pillar is the water safety. Now you see, it's a kind of Bart showed us the 5 stages of maturity. In fact, this is also maturity. You go from fundamental to applied. You go from lab scale to real scale. That's the way on research is, and we're neither on the one side or the other side. We're just in the middle. So we're on the scale making from lab scale towards field scale. That's our focus of research topics we do. And you can't do it alone, so you have to do it both with universities, institutions, knowledge centers, but also with consultant companies. And it should also be applied. And it's also something with the market, because it's not, at the end, the market is going to be the thriving force for implementing results. We have a strategy note, so the strategy, societal challenges. Climate change adaptation is always a big one. Protection against flooding, water quality, and also biodiversity is one of. Climate change mitigation is one, and under circular economy. Let's say if you have a wastewater plant, you for cleaning sewage. At the end, it was just we put a lot of energy in, and everything was burned more or less. Then you get rid of your sewage. But at the moment, we want to be more circular and use it as, let's say, as a funding, or we want to get material out of it which we can have a second life. So you use, let's say, from a sewage plant, you collect all the paper residues which are in it, and you use it in asphalt for, let's say, strengthening asphalt and make it more going with. So you're reusing the materials. I think that's quite an important aspect. This is, we have a lot of societal challenges. There's too much, but you see here this in Dutch. But it's mere to give an overview what kind of subjects there are and who is responsible for which kind of subject. Last year we were 50 years young, although due to COVID, I think we celebrated it for 2 years that we were 50 years young. So I think this year we will be 52 years young. But here staat de kracht van kennis, or the strength of knowledge. I think that's now and in the future. That's, I think, our main goal at the moment. The power of knowledge. And I'll give you some examples of what we do. I can give you a lot of examples. These are the levees, organization of special courses. That is, we have elections on water board level and for province level in March. And then you get new boards of both the provinces and water boards. And we have organized courses to get the new elected people on the readiness level that they can work very good about the content. We have the production of a school book. I think that's not school book is not the right word. It is about on the level of students for applied applied universities, but also on university level that we collected all kind of knowledge. It's kind of it's not like the International Levy Handbook, but it's more for educational purposes. But there are also overlaps. We really work on platform from exchange of experience, because that's, I think, very important that we organize that. Let's say if you have an ecologist in a water board, there may be 1 or 2 ecologists in a water board. But if you have 21 water boards, you already have 21 first. Just two is maybe about 40, 60 people who have the knowledge on a certain topic. And then you got much more power and much more strength, and you can combine the knowledge of those people to get more looking to the future. We're definitely working on a new governance of asset management. I think the asset management is everywhere in Europe, and also not only with the water boards, especially also with Rijkswaterstaat, but every organization is an issue. And we always have, I think every government in the Netherlands have too less money for maintaining the assets. So we were trying to find out a new strategy and how we can work on an asset management and keep the assets maintained and improved, especially because after the Second World War, about 100% of all our assets are really new built. So in the years 50 till 2000, we have built only new assets, but could also be roads and bridges or pump stations or anything else. Going on an average lifespan between 50 and 75 years, that will mean that from, let's say, 5 years ago until the next 20, 25 years, all the assets should be renewed. You talk about an awful lot of money. We also do, although we, STOWA, we're an organization for applied research you need fundamental research to have spin-off in the applied research. So we secretly finance fundamental research as long as we don't say it too loud, but most of the research will go to universities like Wageningen University or Nijmegen University, what's at the moment about biodiversity, or at TU Delft, what's about technical knowledge. And of course, the living lab Hedwige-Prosperpolder, maybe you heard of it. And our perspective is to up-to-date knowledge. And that's not only because we want it, but it's also what we explained to you earlier, that when there's something rotten happening in the state of Denmark, we have to prove to the judge that we really applied as a sector the latest knowledge and the newest technologies. This is one thing. Here on the left, you see a sinkhole. And some sinkholes can be very small. This is, I think, in Amsterdam, where near a hospital, there was a big sinkhole and the whole hospital was blocked, And they're using new technology called iPigs. Pigs is kind of instrument what you put in a lighting, and I think this is also what they expect that blew up the North, such a device. They used to clean all the, wat zijn leidingen in het Engels?
Pipelines?
Conduits.
Yeah.
Conduits.
What do you say, Peter?
Conduits.
Yeah, conduit. They use it. They're full of technology, and they sometimes X-ray all the conduit to see if the mantle of the conduit is still strong and big enough. But there's a lot of IT technology, and I think this is also one of the things they expect that on the North Stream 1 and 2 they use these kind of devices, but then put them full with explosive, and then they blow up the pipes from inside, more or less. But we use them on a more friendly way to see if there are leakages in the systems. It's quite interesting because it's also used the pressure of the liquid or the gas of the line, and especially at the moment, because we're all the pipes in the Netherlands are getting in second life from hydrogen oxide. So there's more bars on the system of pipes and all the conducts and all. So we have to do a lot of energy to see if the system is safe enough to hold a bigger pressure. The otherwise thing is what we're doing is you see that satellite images or information are much more used for evaporation, soil moisture, as for in the summer to see where we can provide certain areas with extra water for drought. At the moment, change detection also for drought in levees is very important. If you have the peat area in the Netherlands, you see that sometimes due to let's say very severe drought of the levees, the height decrease could be something between 10 and 15 centimeters, and when it's getting wet again, the volume increases again, and then you get back maybe 10 centimeters. But after time, because of a high drought, you lose 3, 4, 5 centimeters, and that will mean on your life cycle span of a peat levee that every drought causes you lose 5 years of lifespan of your levee. So that's quite it's quite a severe impact. And the challenge of this is not the collecting of the data, but the validation of the data. So that's and you see that more and more, both Rijkswaterstaat but also the water management want to have, let's say, a permanent control room, and that they can control 24/7 on how the levee behaves. But it's more complicated than you think, because in river systems, if you have high cargo boats going through levees which are lying on sand levees or clay levees which are lying on peat, that because of the let's say the huge inland vessels, the whole levee system will expand due to the pressure of the boat going through the canal about 5 to 2 centimeters outwards, and after the vessel has passed, it comes back again. So you see that that even large systems like Levee are in fact breathing elements in the landscape. So that makes change detection quite interesting because it's not one-on-one. So if you see a movement, it doesn't mean that there's a danger of breaking of a levee, but it could also mean that there would be breaking. So we have to not only collect the data and collect and understand the mechanism, but also to find out what changes of change detection does for the strength of a levee. So that makes it really very hard to work on, but we're trying step by step to find out. The other is the improvement of weather and climate knowledge. I think this got a real boost because of the water bomb, which went last June in Wallonia in Germany and the southern part of the Netherlands, that you use translation of KNMI knowledge to practical information for water management, that you use satellite data, but also radar data about statistics of what occurred to rainfall, drought, storm, and extreme events. And then maybe the article, what was yesterday in The Guardian, is very interesting, that in the UK at the moment, they're looking at both the Met Office and the Environment Agency about the El Niño impact of the sea level of the sea, warm and cold streams. It has impact on flooding in certain times in the UK. So at the moment they're preparing in the UK, let's say that in February there could be, let's say last February also an added flooding scenarios. So it's not only about the weather data from the past, but it's also about scenarios what could happen. So that the world is getting more knowledge, but also getting a little bit more complicated, but also more interesting. So that's why we're looking at. So it's not only data from the past, but also trying to understand the behavior of the system, which is better. I think this is for most of the sewage water surveillance COVID, we call it the big brown data. That means that all the data people have from their own loo, more or less, goes to a sewage water plant. And there we can detect much more than we should detect it, but you can detect drug use, you can find not on a house area, but maybe on a street level, you can already define where more drugs are used, where more COVID is. There are all kinds of aspects, if there's a good sewage system or not. And here on the right, you see in Amsterdam, you see that before we already have COVID, you can already detect in a sewage water plant that there will be a COVID outbreak, and also which kind of COVID is in which kind of area. So because people are quite, not everybody wants to be tested, or people just ignore that they have some kind of disease. And I know it's not only COVID, but there are also other kinds of diseases which can be detected in sewage water surveillance. So this is an element which not only the water boards, but also the national government is very interesting. And they use it also in their dashboard for, let's say, on national level to see which areas are more prone to have some kind of potential infection, because the lag time is that the data on a sewage system, from a sewage system, gives 2 weeks before there's an outbreak of a disease already indication that something rotten is going to happen. So that's quite interesting and quite a good instrument to tackle diseases. This is, we do all kinds of things on sewage systems about cleaning, and also the micropollutants, which are quite a high thing. It's a bit technical, so I'll skip it a little bit. But they're doing all kinds of experiments in containers to see which working, which not working. But one of the things to clean sewage by ultrasound and ozone is quite interesting, but also costs a lot of energy. So at the moment when energy is high, you want to use different kind of things. So the perspective would be choose the right technique depending on what you are. One of the things is that groundwater quality is also getting much more interest from the past, because what are the long-term risks of human activities on groundwater activity? So that could be chemical, that could be biological, but that could also because at the end it all comes back to drinking in your drink water system, and then you can't use your drinking water, or you pollute your own people if you don't look carefully at it. This is that we have a different way of on sewage systems to research, that you want to use less energy to get the residue to separate the water fraction from the slip fraction, and they use different techniques. And those this is Nereda, which is quite commercial at the moment already. And then they collect all the stuff which is in the small particles, and they can reuse it for ground stuff. And the other one is that if people use a lot of medicines, and about 80 or 90% of the medicine is released by the human body into the sewage system. So you see that, especially for people with they use high impact medicines like cancer or something else. In fact, you should separate those streams from the general sewage streams, but that's very difficult societal to put special laws in private houses. If people are in hospitals, you already see they separated it quite well. But especially on household niveau, it's very difficult. And then we're trying to find out what can we do to see how toxic the water system will become and get. So, and that's a lot of, and this is a kind of chain, how the impact will be. But that could be 2 hours college in the time as a hydrological toolbox. And especially groundwater. I think that what we see in the Netherlands is that we had a big division between surface water and groundwater, and at the moment you see it's much more incorporated. And one of the roles of a water board is at the moment on governance level is if the water boards should not only be responsible for surface water but also for groundwater, not only for quantity but also for quality, and not only the first level, the groundwater quite near the surface, but also the deep groundwater. And I think this is what's that's going to be taking another 10 years to find out how the organization will be. But especially because of climate change, the dependence of groundwater will be increasing, especially during the dry times. And maybe it could also be used as water storage during wet times, although I'm personally not in favor, but that's a different story. And most important is that we're not only looking at what actions you can take, but especially on the effectiveness of actions. I think we used to do a lot of things because it was possible, but now we're more focusing on what effect should one action have, and how can we improve the effectiveness of that action. So maybe what are the effects of the water balance on soil structure, flexible water management, adjustable drainage, clogging of ditches, and using other crops of tea. And then you go also where maybe you should use other trees, not pine trees, but let's say more leaf kind of trees, or all kind of things, or use not maize but sorghum. So it's a whole complex, and at the moment there's a lot of discussion in the Netherlands about what is the steering mechanism. Should water and soil be steering, or should be, let's say, where you want to build houses be steering? And that's not a technical issue, it's also a government and political issue. And you see that's where we're having a lot of discussions at the moment. I think that was in a brief the whole work we're doing as STOWA. Does that give you an overview, all of you? So it's much more than just water safety, and it is also about water quantity, ecological aspects, biodiversity, and also circular economy, I think. Yeah, do I see something in the chat or not? Oh, he just has to go. So, okay. If that's all, then it was a pleasure giving you some insights in how the STOWA is operating. And always willing to tell you more about it. But I see two hands, one of Vana and then Peter. Vana?
Thank you, Ludolph. Very nice presentation, nice overview of STOWA. Of course, my question is about the school book. What are the topics that you're covering?
Waterbouwkunde, yeah, in Dutch. I can send you a copy.
Yes, I would like to see that, because in universities of applied sciences, we very often look for good textbooks that are a little bit more practical, and it's very difficult to find.
What I'll do is I'll take a copy of 4 next week to Brussels, and I'll give you all.
Thank you.
It's quite nice because it was a lot of practical figures, and it's also that people can borrow it as a teacher for giving lectures to their students. Peter.
Yeah, 2 things, Ludolph. First, I didn't know you did so much in sewerage systems as STOWA. Is that the main part of your activities, or is it mostly flood protection after all?
At the moment, it's called, our organization is called STOWA, Stichting Toegepast Onderzoek Waterbeheer, but we started as STORA, Stichting Toegepast Onderzoek Reiniging en Afvalwater. So we started in 1973 when there was the first, the Sandos Rhine disasters, and we had to focus in the Netherlands on water quality. And then it was from more or less from the start that the water boards were in charge for sewage systems for communal sewage, more or less. So that's the reason why we already, I think we started that 50% of first 100% of a budget was for sewage water treatment. And then from when also the kaderrichtlijn, the framework directive was on, then we focused on water quantity, water quality, and due to some decentralization of, let's say, the government about flood protection, and that the levees were owned and maintained by water boards, also water safety came in view, more or less. So we're more or less, we expanded from sewage water treatment to other directions, but I still think that combining, let's say, sewage and water quality, that's about a third to 40% of our activities, and also finance goes on that direction.
All right. And my second question was about the collaboration you do. So you showed the slide with mostly collaborations with universities and other institutes in the Netherlands, but I think you also look abroad in order to have some collaborations, right?
Yeah, we have the Global Water Research Council. That's there's a WEF and a WER, and there are several organizations in Singapore, Australia, UK to America. Zurich has, and in Germany, they do quite a lot of high-tech research on let's say, it's more about water quality, water quality research about water quality impacts, medicines, micropollutants, and sewage, which is worldwide. And especially areas, all high dense populated areas, like Zurich is high dense, Singapore is high dense, London is high dense, America, you have some high dense areas. When there you try to find, I think also do something with the California area, where you have the same kind of problem. So it is more or less high population of people, less space, and you need a lot of techniques to make sewage available to clean it, more or less. I think you have in Flanders, you have how do you call it? Niet animal.
There's Vlario.
Yeah, Vlario.
Yes.
Vlario. We work together with Vlario. I know, at least my 2 colleagues.
Okay. Thank you, Ludolph.
Perfect. I forgot who is first, Amar or Roberto? Robert first? No, Amar first?
Thank you, Ludolph, for this very interesting presentation. My first question is related to the question of Peter. Do we have in the European Union something similar to what you are doing?
No, I don't think. That's more or less depending on that. In other countries, the role a water board has is done by the national government, or let's say, if you go to UK, then you got the drinking water companies like Southwest Waters also doing sewage water treatment from communal things. But in the Netherlands, there was a lot of discussion because they were privatizing drink water companies, and halfway the process they stopped it. So they're now kind of private companies, but owned by the government. You know, so it's a kind of really Dutch solution. And somewhere in the process, they were also trying to dispatch the sewage water treatment from the water boards, but they found out that if it's a necessary infrastructural thing, it's much more efficient to have it also government and also in control by the communities.
Yeah, my second question is related to you make an arrow and you put as the market is the goal of your work. I don't.
That's not the goal. We develop techniques, but the market should implement them with the organizations. So it's not our role to be a kind of market organization. So let's say on the Nereda, which I showed, then at the implementation of the technique is done by Royal Haskoning DAV, let's say a consultant organization in Amersfoort. So they're selling the plant and they're building the plant and then they're doing that kind of process.
Thank you.
So and that means that it's a bit complicated because the research in first instance is paid by the taxpayer, and at the end the implementation is done by a company. So it needs special governance, more or less.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Robert?
Yeah, thanks. I didn't realize that there was this legal obligation to innovate. I found that interesting. But how is it actually done in practice? Is there some sort of regular period where the government might look at it, or is it only when a disaster happens and then it's on the organizations to make sure that they're continuing to be innovative?
We have there are two things. We have two law books. One is the civil law book, and the other one is for the inhabitants, more or less. And they apply different. What we do is we have, let's say, from looking at levy point of view, you have every 12-year assessment, more or less. And I think the assessment action, just in the time, you have to apply the most modern technologies. So that's the proof of the pudding that you really put the most new knowledge in your assessment of the levy. In between, it's for the maintainer or the owner of a levy to apply it. But it is also about a judge is always seeing if it is reasonable. It's not only about an obligation, but also the judge does a check. Should you have known it? Can you have known it? Can you have implemented the knowledge? Or they do a kind of a reason check on how it behaves. And that's on responsibility. But let's say if there is something what happened last July in the waterbomb in Wallonia, southern part of the Netherlands, Limburg, and in Germany, then from now on, everybody should know that such a thing could occur. So if there's next year also a waterbomb and some damage will occur, then a judge will definitely say, okay, that happens. You should have known it. Did you already did some actions to prevent it? Now, the cause is too big to completely tackle everything, but you should at least have some actions already available to minimize the impact, let's say. And if you haven't done that, you're more reliable or more applicable for paying damages to inhabitants than otherwise. So it's about how it is about not really implemented all the action, because sometimes an action takes 10 years before to implement, but you already should have done adjust your philosophy as organizations how to act with it.
Okay, clear.
So if you keep on building, let's say, on low-lying areas without putting a nice levee and pumping station around it, you're much more liable for, let's say, if there's a flooding in that house, to repair the kitchen and the floor of the house.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'm always willing to talk about, especially during beers. I'm very interested about the subject, so we can talk much more about this kind of things. I thank you very much for your positive questions and focused attention. Thank you very much.